Hello, lovelies. Cory here, and welcome back to Wilder Woman. So, I'm still pregnant. As of this recording, it is March 25th. So, I'm actually recording and uploading my March recap a little bit early because honestly, I don't know when I'm going to have this baby and be in the hospital and kind of on lockdown. So, what I've decided is I'm just going to take today, record some videos for you all, get some things out there that I've wanted to say, and just kind of, keep moving with my life, because yesterday was my due date. I am now 40 weeks and 2 days as of today. And, I kind of expected that to happen. This is my 5th pregnancy. They always seem to go late. Babies don't want to, come out. My body doesn't seem to want to kick them out. So half the time we end up scheduling an induction, or what I like to call an eviction, in order to get these babies out here into the world. So yeah, that's where we're at. It's been kind of a crazy month, guys. We've spent most of it with Mercury retrograde. Mercury stations direct on Thursday. Is it Thursday? What day? So today's Monday the 25th, yeah? Thursday the 28th. So when you're stuck on the last month of pregnancy, I swear days just run together, because one of the other downsides is you can't really sleep very well. At least I haven't been sleeping very well. I don't sleep very well during the last month of pregnancy, really even the last couple months. And this month in general has just been awful sleep-wise. Not being able to get comfortable, not getting into the right position, having to constantly sleep on my left side because that is the most comfortable, but then I wake up with this arm dead. So working through it. And if I seem a little harebrained, it's probably from the lack of sleep, y'all. So bear with me. Just bear with me. As far as the depth year, all right, calling myself out. March, I really just fell off of it. I wasn't diving into my practice as much as I had intended to. I was buying things left and right. I think I backed like 4 indie decks on Kickstarter just in this past month. Bought a crap ton of books. And where I decided to justify that in my mind, going against and breaking my own rules, there was a little bit of heartbreak the past few months. Really, since the start of 2019, we've lost 3 really amazing and prolific contributors, teachers, authors in the pagan and witchcraft community, which, okay, I'm also hormonal, so I'm gonna try not to cry, because these 3 in particular also, they hold a really special place in my heart, because their works, their, not just their books, but the articles that they contributed to different publications, following their work and teachings for a long time. I had the wonderful opportunity of meeting one of them, Raven Gramasi, when I was about 18, 19. And I bought my first book of his. The Witch's Craft had just come out. He was down in Ocean Beach for a book signing at Starcrafts, and had him sign it. Sat there during a wonderful kind of class/lecture that he gave on the book. This was like a book tour he was doing. And he spoke to us, about tools of the craft. It is just one of the more loving memories that I have of, my early days of practicing witchcraft and meeting him. and, getting his take as, a hereditary witch who, practiced more traditional forms of witchcraft. His practice was heavily influenced by, his Italian roots, wrote several books on Italian witchcraft specifically. And, as someone who was very Celtic and eclectic at that point in time, who was raised in a Lutheran family, I have no pagan practicing relatives to speak of. It was just interesting seeing that perspective and seeing, hereditary witches out there, folks whose families had practiced folk magic and more traditional forms of witchcraft for long periods of time and kind of, kept it on the DL, but passed those traditions on to their children. Because I didn't have that experience, it was eye-opening for me as someone coming into adulthood, who had wanted to build a family at one point, to think, okay, this is how I would do it. This is how I can pass this down to my kids. It's been done before. I can do it too, even though I'm starting the process, in my family. So it was, like I said, I repeated this, but it was an eye-opening experience for me, seeing that perspective on the other side of the table, getting his take, meeting other witches. And it was just, it's one of the more fond memories I have from that point in time in my life, because my teenage years were kind of dark and hard to get through. And I just remember that event with such joy. And it hurts my heart that, he's not with us anymore. That DJ Conway, who her Celtic Dragon Tarot was the first tarot deck I ever got. My mother bought it for me, again, at Starcrafts, down here in Ocean Beach, San Diego. And I have several of DJ's books, just like I have several of Raven's books. Eden McCoy is the most recent one that we lost. Crossed through the veil very unexpectedly from complications from the flu. And her book, Fairy Folk, I probably reread 3 or 4 times as a teenager. Working with the Fae was the Fae were the first set of astral guides that I ever worked with and connected with. And it was through her teachings that I built my astral temple on the edge of the fairy realm. And I worked within that book for probably the first 3 or 4 years of my practice. And it was always on my wish list to get several more of their books, especially Eden, to get her Celtic Women Spirituality book. There are so many. So in March, I kind of lost it. I had a couple very emotional moments working through, hearing about these 3 wonderful and amazing people crossing over through the veil. And it was pretty heartbreaking. So I kind of went on a binge, and I'll do a video on this. I've, my other books that I've had for a long time of Ravens are sitting up on the shelf. Same thing with, DJ, her Celtic Magic book. Yes, I understand that it's not 100% historically accurate, but I worked rituals out of that book for years. Changing up the words quite a bit, but followed her format quite a lot in the beginning of my practice, along with Scott Cunningham's. And then, let's see, I also have Maiden Mother Crone from DJ, several books, but I kind of went on a binge, and I bought several books of Ravens that I didn't have. The Witch's Familiar, Grimoire of the Thorn-Blooded Witch, Hereditary Witchcraft, which now that my kids, are hereditary, kind of need to figure out some stuff for them. The Book of Ways, Volume 1 and 2. And then also I have it's in the other room, but Encyclopedia of Wicca and Witchcraft, as well as I bought his Ancestry book, which I keep kicking myself because the seller that I purchased it from keeps delaying the shipping. And yet I was down in Ocean Beach just yesterday, and a store that I absolutely love had 2 copies. And I was like, I could have just come down here and purchased this from Diana and saved myself a lot of hassle. Which is probably what I'm going to do. So what I've learned about this is, number 1, grief makes me binge shop faster than anything else on the planet, which is a huge bummer. And it means that I really need to examine myself every time that I go through a period of loss, that I feel grief, to focus on where those feelings are coming from and actually address the root problem, rather than trying to sweep it under the rug by getting an instant fix and shopping, which is apparently what I tend to do. That was also reinforced this weekend, was my mother's birthday, and my mother passed away in 2011. My brother and sister came down to San Diego to visit us a little bit, but also specifically we went to visit her gravesite and my dad's gravesite, right next to each other. Oh, and it was a very emotional weekend, very emotional, and I shopped through the entire thing. So it just, if anything, what this month has taught me for the depth year is that grief and sadness are a trigger for me still, even after working through grief my entire life, and thinking I had a really good handle on it through cognitive therapy, through a lot of the shadow work that I've done along this path. There's still things that I do triggered by grief and loss that I was ignoring, that I didn't see, that I had blinders to. And so that was probably the biggest lesson from March. The biggest takeaway that I had was, okay, this is why I fell off this wagon. It's to cover up, to, suppress my working through the grief and the sadness and the bereavement by just shopping. It's almost like I'm taking stuff to fill the place of what I had lost, which is silly because, what you've lost can't really be replaced with stuff. But that's what I was doing. I was shoving stuff in that hole rather than dealing with the hole, cradling that wound, working through what I needed to work through to begin to heal that wound. Grief never really goes away. This was a conversation I had with my brother yesterday while we were at the cemetery. Was, he and I were just kind of holding each other and crying. And it's been, 8 years since her passing. And he said, it really doesn't get easier, does it? And I said, no, it really doesn't. It never goes away. You just learn how to live with it. You learn how to move on with a new normal, if that makes sense. So, oh, very profound lessons from March. A lot of deep teachings. A lot of things that I need to be aware of and move through going forward. I definitely do want to keep going with the depth here, though. Yes, I completely just fell apart in March. I threw all of my rules out the window and bought a ton of things. Didn't dive into what I had intended to dive into. Even fell off with my daily practice quite a bit. But I want to pick back up. A lot of times when we set goals for ourselves like this, that are long-term, that are like a year, 6 months, we set New Year's resolutions. We set all of these rules for us as like, okay, this is a clean slate. We pick a date and we say we're going to go and do this from here on out. When we fall off that wagon, it's human to be like, okay, I failed. I'm going to scrap that. But I'm determined that, yeah, I fell off. Completely, absolutely, utterly abandoned this process. But I'm seeing the reasons why I did that. I'm able to now really start working through them from a very productive point, to examine those reasons, to start to look for when those same feelings and triggers come up for me, and work through them productively and hold back those impulses of, okay, I recognize this feeling. I understand that this is what's causing this feeling, or that this is why I'm reacting the way I'm reacting. I need to now hold back my gut instinct to buy this or go look at this website or check this out. I need to rein that back in and instead find something else to help me work through the grief, maybe journaling, doing a guided meditation, talking to the Morgan, talking with Persephone, actually doing work, sitting there, talking about maybe who it is that I lost, even if I just write about them, writing out all of my favorite memories of them, all the things that I love about them, and getting that out there, memorializing that, and, taking the time to dive in and examine that hurt. Really deep dive, do a depth with that grief, plunge into it, lean into it, as opposed to trying to cover it up. So, very valuable lesson learned from falling off that wagon. But in addition to that, I have a point now to get back up, dust myself off, and get back into the process, reaffirm the rules that I put in place for myself, even look at those rules and say, do they still make sense? Do I need to reevaluate them? Do I need to change anything? What would make this process work for me? And how can I work myself into this process. So I'm still determined to continue on with it. It may look a little bit different going forward. I'm still examining it, but that was a pretty pronounced breakthrough right there. Just realizing that was a huge trigger for me. And again, it's something that I feel like as I'm coming up on, this is the 20th anniversary of my dad's passing at the end of the summer, that I kind of feel like maybe I should have known this about myself after all the work that I've done. But what this goes to show you is that no matter how long you've been walking a path, no matter how long you've been doing the work, there are still things to discover about yourself. There's still things to learn. We're all students. Forever, we're just students. And yeah, there are things that we can teach. Lessons that we've, picked up, that we've learned. But there's still something out there to learn about ourselves and opportunity to grow from those. So it's humbling to go through that kind of process. And I'm grateful that I get to go through that kind of process over and over and over again. I feel like it constantly checks my ego. And whenever I feel like I got this shit together, universe goes, you don't have it as much together as you think you do. And it's a good reminder, guys. It's a real good reminder. So looking at that, and also I'm taking the opportunity to really look at my financial shadows, how much I spend in relation to my depression and my grief. This is going to be terrifying. But, I'm 33 years old. I don't budget. I should. I don't. My parents didn't have a household budget. It wasn't a class that I ever took in high school. It wasn't a class I took outside of high school. Should I have? Absolutely. Is there any excuse for why I didn't? No. Being transparent, I don't have one. Other than I didn't want to look at it. So, determined to look at that this year. Set a budget for myself. And like I said, this is going to be terrifying, but print out at least the last 3 months of my bank statements and highlight all of the times that I did an impulse buy and look at what was happening around that time and what triggered that impulse buy. And then how much emotional shopping I do in a 3-month period. Like, how much could I have really saved if I didn't make those emotional impulse buys? I don't want to do this. I don't, but I'm going to. Because with everything that occurred, the time that I spent purchasing all of this stuff, cluttering up this room, cluttering up our house with things, I could have spent reading, working on my spiritual practice, creating content for you guys, working on my business, spending time with family. Easy one, number one priority. And it's falling to the wayside because I'm burying things. I'm still burying things. And it's, a reminder as well that I'm not cured of depression and anxiety. It's still always going to be there. And I've started to drop off the healthy ways that I was dealing with that. It's really not awesome to admit that, but I have to admit that to myself. I've stopped working through my depression and anxiety in healthy ways. I still use essential oils to support myself when I can. But like I said, the emotional shopping, I'm sure there's also quite a bit of emotional eating that's going on there as well. And I can't just blame pregnancy hormones. I can't. This is a pattern that's been with me my whole life, you guys. And I had much healthier ways of dealing with these. And I make excuses not to do them. I don't have time. I can't get this done. There's that saying that you should meditate at least 5 minutes a day. And if you don't have time for the 5 minutes, you should be meditating for 30. Because at that point, you've overloaded yourself so much that you need that extra time. And I'm that person now. I'm that jerk who's now made 101 excuses not to walk their talk. And that's shitty. So there's been a lot of self-examination through this retrograde, which is good because that's what this time period is for. I actually get really excited when Mercury goes into retrograde when Mercury goes retrograde, because the biggest lessons that you can go through self-examination or a result of self-examination, from looking at all of the crap you don't want to look at, from sitting there and reevaluating, reviewing, re-energizing yourself, all those rewords. And that's what happens during this period of time. Things start to slow down. It's an opportunity to look at all of this stuff and get that kick in the ass that you need. And boy, was Mercury like, well, we're going to send you through a boot camp right now. Which I should have known was coming because Mercury is my ruling planet, being that I'm a Virgo. And I know my sister's going through the same shit since she's a Gemini. But, for me, personally, this was like, oh, you're not doing as hot as you think you are. And I needed that. I needed to look at that. So at least I have a lot of reading to catch up on once this kid gets here, while I'm in labor, while I'm healing, when I go on vacation in April, a lot of stuff to read, to look at, to digest. And I'm excited to share it with you guys. But because of all of this stuff, I didn't dive as deep into the Alice in Wonderland themes that I wanted to tackle in March. So I'm going to continue those on into April. Going to keep working with the same decks. Going to keep looking at these things, trying to find out, okay, what is it there? What's on the surface there that I want to work through? And I've realized that part of the reason why I keep getting drawn to Alice in Wonderland, or why I was recently, was looking at the ways that I've been neglecting my inner child. I've been really focused on adulting and trying to adult really well, that I'm not playing with my kids as much. The past couple nights, though, we've spent hours playing Guess Who, and it's been hilarious fun. Absolute fun. And I think my inner child is still pretty jaded, and she needs a little TLC. So in April, in addition to straightening out the finances, looking at the impulse shopping, etc., I still want to dive into those Alice in Wonderland themes. Look at how I can open up my imagination more. I made a really amazing White Queen blend, which I want to share with you guys a little bit later in the month. I still want to work with it a little bit, see if I need to tweak it, but so far I'm like super in love with it. And I created that essential oil blend with oils specifically as the way I see the White Queen in Through the Looking Glass, which is someone who sees things from a completely different perspective, who has their imagination open, who is the adult version of the inner child. And that's kind of where I keep going with these themes. What Alice seems to be trying to teach me is open up to possibility, open up to imagination. Think about things from a point of view that even seems a little crazy, but works. So I'm excited. I feel like there's still stuff there, but I only scratched the surface in March. So I'm going to keep dragging it out, continuing it through April. Excited to share with you guys, what I go through as far as results of meditations that I want to do, rereading the books. I pulled those out, dusted those off, going to reread those. And, working with that oil blend and what's been coming up for me. And just doing shadow work in general with my inner child and seeing how that goes. So stuff is coming, but the lessons from March weren't what I expected. Ooh, it was a big old slap in the face, but it was one that I admittedly needed. Okay. And I'm working through it. I'm working through each of those things. I send all of my love and admiration and gratitude to Eden McCoy, Raven Grimassi, DJ Conway. What they contributed to the pagan community can't be replaced. It just, nothing but gratitude and love for those three souls as they cross through the veil. And I know that wherever they are, they're planning their next foray into the world. And it's going to be just as magical as these lifetimes were. So just sending them much love, sending a lot of love to their families and friends who are no doubt grieving really hard and missing them terribly. So sending that out and really, really hoping that, 2019 will be a little calmer, that the goddess won't call, anyone else from our community home, but if she does, that they go in peace and love and with ease when it's their time to go. But those hit a little hard. I know they've probably hit you guys just as hard as well. So sending you, my dear one, much love and healing. If you're in the same spot I am and you're just feeling that hole pretty profoundly, that I hope you feel the entire community wrap around you, lovely, and you're good. Okay? And if you need anything, comment below. You can shoot me a private message as well, but just sending you just as much love and healing. All right? So I think that's where we're going to end it. Starting to get to be a really, really somber video. But that was March. It hit like a freaking hurricane. And I'm still trying to figure out what happened and where my footing is now, get my bearings so I can plan for April. But maybe your month was a little bit easier. I don't know. Hoping so. And I hope that your April is filled with much love and joy, okay? More videos to come. But if there's a sudden drop off, just know that I'm trying to push out a baby. And I'll get back to you guys as soon as I can, okay? Much love and light to you. Right? Blessings, dear one. And I can't wait to see you in the next video.